I'd like to share this excerpt with you. Expect to win, plan to fail. A béarnaise sauce is simply an egg yolk, a shallot, a little tarragon vinegar, and butter. But it takes years of practice for the result to be perfect. Ferdinand Point. To become a truly proficient cook, you're going to have to burn your forearms, slice a few thumbs, and spill more than a little wine on your blue suede shoes. That's just the way it is. If blood, bleach, and burnt béarnaise aren't your thing, I highly suggest staying out of the kitchen and hiring a chef. Here's the trickiest part of all. You're going to have to tie on that apron and go into the kitchen with all the confidence of a 5-star chef. You gotta be like Emeril Lagasse with the salt shaker and jut out your hip and yell BAM as salt and pepper insanity go flying away. Cooking is planned chaos. It is passion at a high-rise cocktail party rolling around in the coat closet. It's brie and apple grilled cheese around a campfire. Sometimes it's even a dressed-up 2-minute ramen with a handful of cauliflower and a little bit of sriracha on top. Gastronomic success isn't always spotless and is often an accident, but it never ever happens without a trip to the grocery store, a really good plan, and double-checking your list. When entering the kitchen, you'd better expect to win but plan to fail. Every veteran cook knows this rule. Use the recipe as a guideline, but check the ingredients twice when you make your grocery list. When trying something complex and new, you damn sure better have a backup plan, or you're likely to be feeding your guests a takeout pizza or a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Problems arise when you start comparing your Tuesday night supper to an episode of The French Chef. Do you think it's any wonder that Julia Child's initials are JC? She's the home chef's equivalent of Jesus Christ, bringing hallowed culinary ground to the masses. She's always perfect, even despite the wine. But let's face it, few of us have any illusions that we are reincarnation of a man millions call their savior. But we continue to think that we can compare ourselves to that other JC. We continue to think we're a master chef without all that darn pious practice. If your aim is to be Christ-like, you're likely to spend years studying, practicing, communing, and searching. Becoming a great cook is no different, albeit a little less noble. When approaching a new recipe, and especially one you're going to serve to the masses, you'd better be prepared to never create something quite like the original. The good news? In the kitchen, at least, you might just create something better. The more you study, the more you will fail, but one of these days, all those simple ingredients are likely to add up to a miracle, a perfect béarnaise. Maybe even my holy grail, a perfect soufflé. The confidence only comes with time, though. You gotta fake it till you make it. Remember, Jesus didn't start his ministry until his 30s, and Mastering the Art of French Cooking wasn't published until Julia was 50. When it comes to big wins, despite what the internet age would have you believe, a little life usually happens first. We could make a million cooking references to prove this theory, like good bread needs a good healthy rise, or good soup and good cube both require the low and slow to build their flavors. And yet when it comes to our Tuesday night dinners, we want it all in 30 minutes or less, and we want it to be a gourmet meal, damn it. But the most important advice I could possibly give you is to plan for the messes and expect only the occasional miracles. I think love works pretty much the same way. A fair share of heartbreaks are part of the price you gotta pay for a masterpiece. Let's face it, you're not Julia, and that guy you've fallen for isn't Jesus. So we've already established that neither one of us is divine, gastronomically speaking or otherwise. So fucking up in a big way is a pretty likely scenario. I know we've all grown up on fairy tales about princes. You might even know the occasional couple who were high school sweethearts, but that isn't the reality most of us are living in. With 1 in 2 marriages in America ending in divorce, the verdict has clearly already been read on this one. Your heart is going to get trampled on before Forever After is served up, steaming hot and ready to satisfy you. Even if you only make it to the altar once, or even not at all, the chances are pretty good that your first love won't be your last. And you know what? I think that's a good thing. You know that old saying, you don't know what you've got until it's gone? Well, it's true about love too. You don't really understand it until you've had your heart broken a couple times. And oh, by the way, that couple that met in high school and stayed in love forever, I'd be willing to bet my last baguette that they broke each other's hearts a few times in the process. I bet it took a little bit of heartbreak for them to learn how to go from pimply kisses to Viagra-popping 80-year-old passion. In love, just as in the kitchen, you gotta approach it with your naive optimism tampered by a heaping serving of reality. This is a particularly hard lesson to learn if you, like me, came of age with a particularly hardcore affinity for Drew Barrymore romantic comedies. We ladies crave romance, not because we want to be loved, although we do, not because we want to have something to brag to our friends about, although we do. We crave romance because we want to know that we are wanted, because all too often we don't know that we are everything we need all on our own. I once read a novel where the particularly jaded mother of the heroine admonished that the key to happiness is to marry someone who loves you more than you love them. And for a while, after a painful divorce, I thought she might have been onto something. This belief led to a lot of really poor behavior in my dealings with romance. In fact, when I look back at my past, a lot of my dealings with romance have ended in damn shameful behavior because of a constant need for someone else to fill me up. I needed someone else to give me credit for being the deliciously unique, gorgeous woman that I am, because I couldn't admit that I was to myself. When it comes to being happy in love and to being happy in general, you gotta know you're enough going in. You gotta know you'll be okay if this thing doesn't work out. In my humble opinion, songs that ask questions like, how do I breathe without you and there's no me without you, do you a disservice. If you want to be happily in love for the rest of your life, you gotta be happily in love with yourself first. Does that sound a little selfish? Good, it's supposed to be. Maybe you think I'm being a traitor to romance, but one of my rules of adulthood, as Gretchen Rubin would call them, is to approach your love life the same way you approach your kitchen. Expect to win, but plan to fail. Lest I lose you completely, let me take a moment to explain. Too often, when we enter a new relationship, we fall head over apron into an isolationist haze of gooey feelings and great sex. We forget about our friends, our hobbies, and sometimes even our responsibilities. Everything feels so good that we want to hold on to those moments for as long as possible. And it works great, and it feels great. Until it doesn't. Research consistently shows that the happiest relationships are ones where both parties maintain their individual identities. If this is true, and I believe it is, then two don't become one like we're raised to believe. 1 + 1 does still equal 2. It's just an enhanced, supercharged, and titillatingly exhilarating 2. I didn't learn this lesson until late in my 20s. If I had, it might have saved me from some really poor behavior. If I'd have stopped looking for my other half and just made myself whole instead, maybe I wouldn't have broken quite so many hearts. Maybe I wouldn't have had mine broken quite so many times. As many times as you've heard it before, it has to be repeated again. Rule number 1 in life and in cooking is this: expect to win, plan to fail. Maybe if you do, you won't burn so many lamb chops. At least that's the way it worked for me.